Warrior, we must talk about the National Human Trafficking Hotline because I don't really hear anybody else talking about it, and it is time to sound the alarm. Do not switch the dial, as we like to say. I want you to hear what this is all about, but first make sure you're subscribed to our Warriors channel. Please like these videos, please share these videos. They are very important that we connect the threads, that we provide you with facts and truths, and a reminder, I'm just going to throw this out there, that Congress, our elected representatives, the government, they work for us, we the people, and we the people are not backing down. That being said, let me give you a little background about the National Human Trafficking Hotline, again, that people should be screaming at the top of their lungs about, but I'm not hearing anything. So for about 2 decades, it was run by a company called Polaris, Polaris, in DC. And, I started the Warriors in 2020, and we all always put out there, it is a resource, the Human Trafficking Hotline. And I would hear whispers, or people would say things to me, or I would ask, as I became more savvy, people would ask me questions about it. I would then ask people in law enforcement, those I thought would be a good source, that we can have confidential conversations, and they would all tell me that they were slow to pick up on calls, they were slow to return calls to law enforcement. And you have to remember with human trafficking, if somebody calls this goes for any hotline, it is usually an emergency situation. And what's even more frustrating is that person needs immediate attention. They need an immediate resource. They may only have seconds, if not minutes, to get away from somebody. Or if somebody is brave enough that they've recognized, because remember, most people being trafficked, right? They don't even realize they are a victim. They are overwhelmed. They are psychologically damaged. They are gaslit. They are groomed. So they don't even equate with what's going on with them with being sex trafficked, labor trafficked. Therefore, they're not calling any hotline numbers. That's why I'm glad when I go in airport bathrooms, and I always check, there are signs hanging up in most of them. Call this number, always in Spanish also, because they believe a bathroom, a train station, a bus station, at the airlines, it may be the only time a victim is able to go in alone to this place and have a couple of minutes. But that being said, if they're not recognizing they're a victim, what good is it? But anything's better than nothing. Let's stay on track with what I'm telling you about the hotline. So now we have a new administration. There have been plenty of complaints, lots of background innuendo with Polaris I'm not going to go into. It's a very complicated situation when you're dealing with survivors, victims. And here comes, everybody agreed that it needed a rebranding. And we had a very good group come along, being headed up by Megan Lundstrom. Now, Megan, you can find her interview right here on Lynn's Warriors. Just go back and look for that. I'll actually put it in the body of this video to make it easy for you. Now, Megan is a survivor of trafficking. Who better to rebrand something, help victims, than a survivor herself, who brought in, I believe, 60 plus other survivors? Because I can talk until I'm blue in the face, right? I am not a victim or a survivor of human trafficking. That person who is and bravely comes forward because they want to help others, educate others, help others out of that plight that they've been in, are to be commended. And that is what resonates with a victim. If they got somebody on the phone who says, listen, I was in your shoes, let me tell you what to do. I can't offer that. I can repeat, I can showcase the survivors, but we need those voices. So Megan was doing an excellent job. Things take time. Things are complicated to unwind, clean up. And she was really putting her heart and her soul into it. Now, come along, new administration. And it was now tasked with the HHS, Health and Human Services, to clean up the hotline. And what did they do recently? And this is why I don't understand more people aren't talking about it. They gave this contract, bear in mind, business as usual in Washington. They gave it to a company called Compass out of Austin, Texas. They gave them a $35 million 5-year contract, $7 million a year. But I want to tell you about Compass a little bit. They call it Compass a new operator, and it's a nonprofit, Compass, that on paper looks like a routine kind of management company. Again, I want to know more about Compass. Do they have survivors working there? Do they know how to direct people? Do they have the resources at their tips? Like survivors that were working with Megan and were really trying hard to get everything lined up. I want to know more about this Compass. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit more. But for those of us on the ground, and that would be a Megan, that would be survivors, that would be victims, that would be good orgs, like Lynn's Warriors and plenty of others and individuals working to help eradicate, right, all of this trafficking. This Compass looks like, it's business as usual. I keep saying that because, listen, when rescue is rebranded, it can take on many forms. Just think about this for a minute. So will this just be more criminalization of our vulnerable people and children? Because think about it. Like anything else, I came to learn, shockingly so I'm still in disbelief, that human trafficking is big business, right? Talking about kids, talking about sex trafficking. I'm here to say also, there's so much labor trafficking. We don't equally talk about labor trafficking like we do sex trafficking, because I believe media and people think it's titillating to talk about sex trafficking and especially bring minors into it. But hotlines really are never neutral. They get to decide who's going to get services, who we're going to talk further with, who's going to get funneled to the police. I guess if somebody answered the phone, they don't like it, the story would vanish. Would that person ever call back or attempt? Because I've heard plenty of stories from survivors that say, they didn't do anything for me. Or, I went here, they didn't help me. I went to this nonprofit, they didn't help me. So let's continue. No, Polaris has left a trail of problems. Referrals that turned a confidential call into an investigation, the last thing a trafficked person needs, and a default assumption that hotline equals law enforcement. So survivors deserve choices, not, carceral pipelines. Again, pipeline for profit. But I want to tell you about this Compass. So we do want to, again, applaud that recently the hotline was trying to be cleaned up, trying to be survivor-led, rethinking how power and trust would function in this national hotline. But again, things take so much time. And all of a sudden, HHS awards to this Compass. Now, let's talk about this Compass for a minute. A Compass appears to be just a call center, efficient but empty. Can you imagine? They probably have bots. I don't know this for a fact. Don't hold me to it. Probably have bots answering the phone. More like a 911 dispatch. I should say 911 dispatch hub, stripped of the trauma-informed care that made Polaris worth saving. Without advocates, again, it goes back to, unless an advocate who understands the nuance, survivors must be any of this talk with trafficking. We always have a survivor at the table, survivor input, survivor brainstorming, survivor everything. We cannot do our jobs without the survivors plugging in the holes for us, telling us what needs to be done, telling us what we need to preach to the media. But Compass risks, very much risks. I'm looking at this company, just a hollow echo that, systems, the very system survivors have fought to transform. But here's the thing about Compass that is so dangerous and really got me thinking about this. It also runs, listen up, warriors, adoption and foster programs, which means they profit from identifying kids who can be moved into custody. This, to me, seems like a very slippery slope conflict of interest. I mean, I'm no lawyer. I'm married to one, but doesn't this seem a little shaky to you? So will this Compass Center fulfill needs or their own foster care pipelines? Because and I know, when history repeats itself, it is always, for the most part, profit over people, right? So for those enslaved, in this trafficking, and survivors who are parents, and there's plenty of them, this is chilling. So when this word gets out, and it is out, they're never going to call, because a call for help could be, the trigger for family separation, not support. So is this state control on steroids? This just seems very not good. Not good. It's a backdoor to CPS, and we have a problem with CPS already. Not enough dedicated workers, underpaid, sloppy staff. Let's just be real here and talk about the reality. Foster care, we all know, that's another money-making operation, right? But There's financial incentive for Compass to do all of this. It's systemic in our society. So they're going to decide, this call center, who's a victim, who's not a victim. What if there's a poor woman with 4 kids? She finally is brave enough to call. They're going to come in, perhaps, take her kids away from her, break up the dynamic of that family. But this really seems like a power grab. I want to dig more into this and keep you, aware of what's happening. But let me tell you what needs to change for a hotline. We need more than, a press release, these broken promises that seem to be floating around Washington and around our country. Transparency, number one thing. Complete transparency for you, for me, for everybody. So we know how many calls are handled, how many are directed to the police, to CPS, confidentiality as default, not the exception. Survivor-led, put a gold star next to that one, oversight boards with real power to intervene. And funding for non-carceral, people going to jail. Alternatives, where's all the money? I'm constantly talking about housing, harm reduction, preventative measures, and peer networks. Again, a survivor of trafficking is best able to handle another survivor of trafficking. They've been there. They understand. It resonates, okay? It is that line in the sand that if I'm talking to somebody and a survivor is talking to somebody, they're going to listen to them, and they may never go back to any form of trafficking. And that's what we need to stop this vicious Ferris wheel. I don't know what this is of deception and also of human rights abuses. So the bottom line is 2025, almost 2026. It's another chapter in the rescue industrial complex, rebranding itself as progress. And our demand is simple. A hotline, any hotline should never be a funnel for punishment. It is to help that person. So we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be preaching about this. We're going to be asking questions. I'll be back in Washington next week, working on not only this, the Kids Online Safety Act, also COPPA, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. I'll just throw this in because I want to do another video on this. This hasn't been changed since 1998. Jeez. And it's basically, you can't sell children's information. That's the bottom line for that. But right now, it's lumped into our 19 pieces of legislation sitting in the House as they're deciding what to do. Our wonderful Kids Online Safety Act, truly a piece of legislation that was going to hold big tech accountable, has been watered down and gutted. But COPPA, C-O-P-P-A, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, is sitting right there with COSA. And they want to make kids 13 in charge of their own. You don't need any parental supervisions, parental guardrails, parental verification. Why is 18 the age of adult? And everything under 18 is considered a minor, but not for big tech. I don't understand it. Nobody understands it. But we keep asking, we keep digging, we question more, because we are the warriors. We want you, your families, your communities to be safe in America. Remember, we the people, they work for us. I'll do the heavy lifting, but I need you to also question more and join us in Community Creates Change. And each and every day when you wake up, go out and be that warrior.